Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberker. 1 week after a pair of devastating earthquakes hit southern Turkey, survivors are still being pulled from the rubble. One of those miracle rescues involved a 40-year-old woman in Gaziantep who was saved 170 hours after the quake struck on February the 6th. Several others, including a young boy and a 62-year-old, were also rescued on Sunday, having spent more than 6 days under the rubble. Turkey's disaster agency AFAD says that more than 230,000 people are involved in search and rescue efforts. The number of international rescuers has risen to over 9,000, coming from dozens of countries. Last week's magnitude 7.7 and 7.6 earthquakes centered in Kahramanmaras have affected 13 million people across 10 provinces in Turkey's south. The death toll passed 30,000 1 week after the quake struck, with tens of thousands injured. Meanwhile, Turkey has issued arrest warrants for more than 100 people suspected of being involved in poor construction practices that led to so many buildings collapsing during last week's quakes.
Sorumluluğu olduğu değerlendirilen
Some 134 people are under investigation for their alleged responsibility in the construction of buildings that failed to withstand the quakes. 3 of them have been arrested, 7 of them are in custody, and another 7 suspects have been given travel bans.
And to discuss the foreign aid that has arrived in Turkey and efforts by the United Nations, joining me now from Ankara is Alvaro Rodriguez. He is the UN Resident Coordinator in Turkey. Alvaro, thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. So 1 week has passed since Turkey...
Pleasure. Delighted to be here.
Thank you. So 1 week has passed since Turkey was devastated. I mean, could you talk to us about the devastation Turkey is going through right now? And when you compare this one to the ones you have seen in the past, what stands out the most?
Well, just like the emergency relief coordinator highlighted, it's been the worst earthquake disaster he's seen. For me, it's also the worst emergency I've seen. And I've been in some other countries that have gone through earthquakes. We know that over 50 million people are impacted in some way or another in the 10 provinces. We know that as part of that, 1.7 million refugees are also impacted. And we know of that number, 1/3, 5.2 million, are heavily impacted, having lost relatives, having lost their livelihoods, having lost the totality of their homes, their belongings, their memories. So it's actually a tremendous disaster of world standards. And this, of course, accounts for the challenges in getting on top of our response to address the needs.
So can you talk about what you have observed in the past week? I mean, how have people on the ground been handling the disaster?
Well, truly it's heroic. But we see a combination of many emotions, a tremendous sadness, including, of course, from our own colleagues, as we as UN have also lost family members and even staff members. We also see anger and frustration because there's a feeling that things could have been done better in the construction over the last decade. And of course, frustration that the needs are so great, they cannot all be met as quickly as people, of course, would want to. So we're working 24/7 as UN, as government, international partners to get that assistance to the people that need it.
So can you talk to us about also how have UN teams been coordinating with the Turkish government, NGOs and foreign missions, and what kind of challenges they had faced so far?
Well, the most important element of the coordination right now is the urban search and rescue and the medical teams. We don't want to give up hope that we will still have miracle cases of people that have survived already 1 week into this disaster. So that's been hugely important. There's been assistance to Turkey by over 100 countries in terms of search and rescue, and that is absolutely essential at this stage. And it's the top priority during the first days of the disaster. But what we need to start focusing now is on the immediate humanitarian phase. The need for shelter, food, continued medical support, how to deal with orphan children, getting people out of the regions out of the provinces if we can, and getting technical staff into the region. And then beyond that phase, of course, is begin to talk about recovery and reconstruction. So these are the phases that we are navigating.
So, Alvaro, UN Secretary General Guterres on Friday said the UN will issue a flash appeal this week to support humanitarian needs in Turkey. So what's the roadmap here?
The roadmap right now is, in fact, there are already a number of funding streams that have become activated. You may have heard about the SURF, where there's immediate release of funding. But the appeal, which we hope to launch later on this afternoon, is essentially the largest and most effective way to actually collect all of the requirements for this initial phase and launch it to friendly states and partners who will then make those contributions. So while we cannot give the details right now, we expect that several $1 million of requests will come out in this flash appeal, and then you will see very rapidly that the donor community then responds by providing the support to UN agencies, to IFRC, to TRC, to other national partners.
So now that thousands of people who were able to have left the region and many more are expected to leave, so what kind of planning and management should be employed moving forward?
Well, the key challenge now, of course, is to navigate through this humanitarian phase to make sure that we can save lives. This is still the life-saving phase. As we move into recovery and reconstruction, we understand from government that temporary housing, possible support with rents, and then rebuilding, hopefully with earthquake resistance facilities, not only residential accommodation, but of course all the community infrastructure, schools, hospitals, etc., will get on stream. And we understand from government that this may take place within the next 12 months, maximum 18 months.
So you say within 12 or 18 months, authorities will be able to determine the full scale of the destruction, right?
No, I think the full scale of the destruction we will know in the next few weeks. This 12 to 18 months will be the recovery and the reconstruction to get people back to their lives to the best of our ability.
So what do you make of the international reaction? Is Turkey getting what it needs, or more international is needed now?
Turkey is getting a lot of support. I think everybody understands the historical proportions of these two earthquakes, and we are hopeful, and we will know once the appeal is launched, we will see the actual manifestation of that support in dollar figures. But in addition, there's a lot of technical support that has been received. And these over 100 international search and rescue teams, which is the largest number ever anywhere in the world, is a manifestation of the friendship of the international community with Turkey.
So what will people in the region need the most once they're settled and basic needs are met?
Well, you got to look at their social needs, and these are the needs in the family, the needs of women, the needs of children, schooling. We need to look at the economy, how to restart the economy, reestablish the value chains, restart production and trade, and of course, the recovery in a way that is sustainable environmentally and, of course, in terms of any potential further earthquakes, given the fact that many of the cities are on top of this very difficult fault.
So how important will it be to treat the mental health of survivors and rescue workers after the earthquake?
That is certainly important. We have already started. In fact, as part of the social interventions, we always say psychosocial support needs to begin immediately. And this involves both the workers, as you have, the rescuers, as you have highlighted, search and rescue workers, of which there are tens of thousands, but of course the broader community, the families that have lost their relatives, the parents that have lost their children, and the children that have lost their parents. That is a huge need. It has already started. It will have to be scaled up.
All right, Alvaro, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. And to further discuss the latest developments on aid distribution and ongoing relief efforts, joining me now from Hatay, Turkey, is Erdem Ayçiçek. He is the head of programs at the Association of Assistance, Solidarity and Support with Refugees and Asylum Seekers. And Tuncay Taymaz from Istanbul. He is a seismologist and professor at Istanbul Technical University. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. Erdem, 1 week has passed since Turkey was struck by one of its worst disasters. What's the situation like in the region? What can you tell us?
First of all, we would like to share our condolences to the victims of earthquake. Unfortunately, as you already mentioned about that, we are passing through the unfortunate days, and currently we are operating in Hatay. And as a MSYD, as a Turkish non-governmental humanitarian aid organization, we are trying to do our best to serving for the victims of earthquake, and also through Hatay, including all district of Hatay. So when we look at the field level, when we look at the site visits, actually it can be easily seen that there is a really strong joint effort, including civil society actors and also governmental authorities, including Residence of Migration Management, AFAD, Provincial Directorate of the Ministry of Health, and other actors actually put their strong efforts to show their really good solidarity example to serve the victims of earthquake. As MSYD, we are working in coordination with Konya Metropolitan Municipality to classification and distribution of the in-kind support activities. Based on this, we have a IT database system. We are receiving calls and receive interviews with the victims of earthquake to listen their needs and emergency priorities. And then based on our online map system, we are able to...
Erdem, how many victims you're currently talking about, for example, from the start of this morning? How many calls you've been getting?
Actually, we are receiving almost 1,000 calls from all regions, Hatay and including all districts. Evidence-based assessments, we are sending our mobile departments to the affected regions, and then we are collecting all the information, and then we are nominating our distribution departments to reach the affected region with the appropriate services and in-kind support.
Yes, so thousands of calls are still coming in for help. So Tuncay, what makes these earthquakes so different from others Turkey had experienced in the past?
Yes, it's a sad story, and we've been experiencing earthquakes throughout this last century, and this is a catastrophic on the continental scale. So we had previously 26 December 1939 Erzincan earthquake. That was also 7.98 magnitude. But in recent years, at this part of the Anatolia, we didn't have as high as 7.8. From my own calculation, and this earthquake's magnitude on Richter scale is 7.94. So it's almost 8 magnitude. And we do have earthquakes similar to this one on the continental scale, like in Nepal, Kathmandu, or in 2021 in Kunlun Fault in Tibet, or in 2010 in Mexico, and Tian Shan earthquakes, and so on. Even Wenshan magnitude 8, so in the last 10, 20 years. So it's not surprising as far as the seismologists or scientists are concerned, but with the short segment of a North Anatolian fault zone, to have a earthquake doublet, one back-to-back, within 9 hours, it was very surprising, and damage throughout the southeastern Turkey is also very scary. And as we see the search and rescue operation and the damage done to the whole region and the society, and also west of Syrian border there, I think more than 5,000 dead is already there. So it's clearly, from my own calculations, I see that the earthquake ruptured about 400 kilometer long fault lying along the East Anatolian fault zone, but not on the East Anatolian fault. Nearby splay detached, segmented, partitioned fault branches. So that caused about 70% of seismic moments and energy released to the northeast, starting from Nurda, Pazarcık, and then turned about and partitioned about Kahramanmaras, Gölbaşı, Pazarcık region,
Tuncay.
turned to the southwest.
You're
Yes.
talking about a 400-kilometer fault rupture. What does it mean for future earthquake risks?
Well, there are branches still capable of producing earthquakes as big as 7.4 magnitude left over in the either end of the fault. So it currently earthquake danger is still there throughout eastern Turkey and Caucasus, up to in Azerbaijan and so on. But this doublet was so close. Okay, we experienced in 1999 Gölcük and Düzce earthquake. That was 7.4, separated by 3 months later another 7.2. And it's not comparable in size, but North Anatolian fault is another story when you compare it with the San Andreas fault or other faults around the globe. But the East Anatolian fault is being banded around Kahramanmaras and Karlova, a couple of points where we call these triple junctions. These are the regions where we have three plates or even four merging together, namely the Arabian plate, African, Anatolian, Eurasian, even northeastern Caucasus portion are still capable of producing earthquakes above magnitude 7. So this will continue, I'm afraid. Another year or so, there is an earthquake danger in the region, and the poor quality of housing design, we can blame anything anybody you want. But the problem is about the local soil condition and the
I'm going to ask about it. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I also have questions for Erdem, because in the past week, Erdem, how has international help added momentum to the search and rescue operations? Are they still continuing? And how long will they stay? Do you know anything about it?
Thank you for the question. Actually, since the beginning of the earthquake, we would like to thank you first, the government of Turkey, and then the international community members who show good solidarity example to providing search and rescue departments to the field. So currently at the Hatay level, we can say that all the international actors who are providing search and rescue services are continuing its own services, and estimatedly such kind of search and rescue services will continue at the end of next week.
So how are...
As MSYD, we are also supporting such kind of activities by provision of specialized services, including health and in-kind support for the who is service provider and who is a member of the search and rescue department.
So what's needed the most on the ground now, Erdem?
So actually, when we look at the field dynamics, the need spectrum can be divided into two categories. One is regarding the common needs that most of the victims of earthquake has, and the second one is more specialized and individual, customized needs. So when we look at the second type of needs, actually, assistive devices, some kind of medical supplies and medicines for the persons with chronic illness, persons with disabilities, and persons with injuries are one of our main priority intervention areas. Apart from this, also food baskets and also hygiene materials are another priority area for us to ensure first delivery to the field.
So, Tuncay, tens of thousands of people have died, but you've just briefly mentioned as well, Hatay was one of the provinces which took the hardest hit in terms of collapsed buildings. Why was Hatay so devastated? Is there a particular soil composition there?
Yes, indeed. We faced a lot of these unconsolidated sedimentary layers where we have rivers running through and drainage patterns of terraces, lake, lagoons, and nearby seashores or beach plains and so on. So there are what we call graben and canyon, half graben and canyon systems are being extended due to the sudden motion of the large, powerful earthquakes like the East Anatolian fault zone. But with this poor farming maybe should be done in such conditions, but there is certainly a suspicion about the the poor condition, poor engineering, poor search about the foundation and the coupling in between the ground and the infrastructure. So there is a site amplifications and resonance problems that not negligible. So that as a society, we are not getting any lectures afterwards, and every 10 or 20 years time, we are facing yet another large disaster. So including in, road cuts and airports and most of the engineering structures, even archaeological, archaeoseismological, or even natural portions or parks are still also in danger. So I'm afraid we are going to lose some of these cultural heritage sites as well. So we have to be extremely careful. It's not belong to Turkey only. This is the archaeological sites are heritage for whole entire world. And so you have to pay attention, but not much of the authorities are listening, earthquake seismologists. In fact, I'm right now collaborating with U.S. scientists in USGS NACE in Colorado and Earthquake Administration Department in China, and also Earthquake Research Institute in Japan.
Yes.
So I'm collaboratively using our knowledge, using high-powered computers, trying to understand the source complexities. What I found for the main shock at a depth of 10 to 15 kilometers, we have more than 10 meters displacement, lateral motion, and it's reached to the surface about 5.5 maximum on the main earthquake. And then the second one is even worse.
Yes.
So local site amplification and the ground problems is caused widespread damage throughout. The magnitude of 7.9 is a huge one. It's certainly within top 5 or top 10 in the world last 100 years.
So I just have one last question, Erdem. What will people in the region need once shelters are set up and basic needs are met? I mean, will you remain in the region? Will you continue to assist these millions of people?
Yes. First of all, we can say that all local and central authorities are working hard to establishment and installment of the shelter accommodation centers in and around the city center. So in coordination with AFAD, there is a huge tent accommodation center has been already established, and also container cities are being establishing for the time being. And in a next future, all of such kind of new accommodation settlement will be finalized with the support of Turkish government and international community members. And currently, yes, for some specific districts, we can say that there is still a huge need for the tents and container settlements. And also another point of on this matter is that hygiene and cleaning, vaccination, washing procedure of the newly established settlements.
Okay.
So all the municipalities are working in a coordinated manner, and as NGO, we are trying to provide complementary services in such settlements.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Ayşe Süberker. Please stay with TRT World for the latest coverage on the February 6th earthquakes. Until next time, take care and goodbye.